Howdy folks. Today we are going to be talking about Insomnia. Insomnia is a very common tool used for API testing. Why is that useful, you might ask? Why don't we just, write the APIs and call them in the front end? Well, two reasons. One, because sometimes there's a very complicated series of steps in the front end you need to do in order to actually test. For example, think about if you want to create some object, you have to log in, you have to navigate to the right page, you have to fill out the field, etc. Insomnia lets you do that very quickly. Also, you might not have the front end ready, or you may not be building the front end at all. So Insomnia is really helpful for both those cases. Let's get started. We're going to be using the same routes from the CRUD models that we built in a previous video. So hopefully this is super familiar for all of you. If not, I'll make sure to have the video link in the description so you can check it out and get more familiar with those. We've got a post for our widgets. We've got a get to get all the widgets, get to get a widget by ID, put to update the widget, and delete to delete the widget. So when you open up Insomnia and get started, this is generally the first screen that you're going to see. You'll have a project here. You can create additional projects as you want to. I usually don't. I usually do all my testing in one project and one collection just because it's easier for me to switch between stuff, but it's there so that if you want to keep a bunch of routes around for a specific project you're working on, you can have them in here and then not mess with them when you're testing other projects. You'll see this is an empty project. To get started, create your first resource. So what you want to do is you want to click on New Collection because a collection is going to be a collection of routes that you can utilize. So click on New Collection. I'm going to call this widget. Well, let's call it CRUD Models. Once you create your collection, this is the screen that you're taken to. You can see here's my project and here's my collection. The environment, we might get into a little bit later, but you want to start out with this plus button here. This is your friend. You click this. There's a bunch of different requests you can make. You can see WebSockets, gRPC, GraphQL, event streams, etc. We're going to go with a standard HTTP request. Okay, click that. It starts off new request, get. This is the method. This is the URL. We'll look at a couple other of these as we move forward. So let's get our server started up. All right, so it is listening on port 3001. I'm going to need that. So for starters, if I want to do my post method, okay, I change this to post. I click this. You can see there's a bunch of different options here. Get, post, put, patch, delete, options, and head. These two you don't normally ever worry about unless you're doing something special. I'm doing a post method. You want to start with HTTP://. You do not want HTTPS. Why is that? It's because when you start an Express server, it runs by default as an unsecured server. This isn't a big deal because once you go to Heroku, Heroku wraps that in a secure layer that you don't need to worry about. But when we're running locally, it's very uncommon to be doing an HTTPS server. And if you are doing an HTTPS server, then usually you're aware of that and you know that's happening so that you can put it in. And if you were doing that, you do an S in front of it. So then localhost. Some people may have trouble with localhost. If you're on a Mac, sometimes they don't have it set up, in which case you would use 127.0.0.1. They are the same thing. This is what's called the loopback IP address. It refers to your own computer, always. But localhost is just a nicer, kind of an alias for that. Colon, and then I put our port, which happens to be 3001. If I run this now, I'm not going to get anything because this is the slash route. So I would need to hit something on my server that's just listening for nothing, and I don't have anything for that. Instead, I've got my routes, which is hooked up to API, which is hooked up to widget, and then those have some slash routes there. So this is API widget. So I'm just going to copy that, pop that in here. If you're going to paste it and you already have a slash, you notice, well, let me see if I can, no, I can't zoom in here. Notice there's two slashes in there now. That can be a problem. If I run that, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. because it's got that double slash, and some systems ignore that. Express does not, so Express will treat that as a thing, and it doesn't know how to handle it. So make sure you don't have any double slashes in there. If I run that, I get an internal server error. And that's because widget.name cannot be null. That's a sequelize validation error. And that's because I didn't pass the body. I didn't pass the name, I didn't pass the quantity. So let's look at how to do that. You see the body here, and there's nothing. So what I do is you got to click on this, and then this gives you all the different types of data you can send as a body. Multi-part form, URL encoded, GraphQL query, JSON, XML, YAML, plain, etc. No body is the default. I'm going to click on JSON. Now, Insomnia will automatically send the correct header, content type header. So if I click JSON, I go to headers, you can see it's already set that content type in there. So I go here, okay, I could say, let's put in name, blah, and what was the other one? The quantity, which is probably an integer, 50. Now I'm going to send that. And now I get 200 OK, and it returns. This is the response from the API. And it handles it appropriately. And you can see if I go to headers here, these are the response headers that the server sent back. This can be useful. So that's how you do the post API. So I'm going to click the drop down here, rename, because new request isn't super helpful. Create widget. Now if I come back to this, I know exactly where the creation widget is. Now I want to get all my widgets. Again, I click plus, HTTP request. It goes to get by default. I'm going to put an HTTP localhost 3001 and then API widget. Notice, same exact URL, just a different method. Totally fine. No body needed on this one. Send. And here's my original widgets as well, the previous ones that were in there from the previous test. But here's my new one down here with an ID of 12. Again, very simple. You just have to know what your routes are going to look like. And I've written them here already, but if you need to look at them, you want to start kind of from here, from your regular controllers, if you're doing module routing, and trace and like, okay, this is API widget slash. So then that would be API widget. All right, so you do have to have a decent understanding of what your routes are to be able to call them, or have someone just give you what the routes are. Either one is fine. Next one. This one takes the ID. So this is API widget ID. I'm going to rename this one. Let's call this get all widgets. And I'm actually going to duplicate it because the next one is similar enough. And I'm going to call this get widget by ID. Okay. The only change here is I'm going to put a slash and then 12 because that's my widget that I just created. It has to be valid ID. And now I just get that single one. Let's say I put one that doesn't exist. It gives me a 404. So it tells you the response code. It tells you what happened. So it's really easy and quick to debug stuff. Like if you've got something that is returning a 500 error, you can keep hitting it over and over and over again. Just click send, click send, click send, and just be checking your logs and say, okay, why is this happening? Which can be kind of helpful for working with that stuff. Okay, so that's the get. We've done post, we've done get. Next one is put. Put is similar. It's API widget name, but put also takes a body. We're going to go click plus, HTTP request, change our method to a put. Put in our URL. 2001. No, you don't have to be calling localhost with this. You can call an external server. So if you're testing your production environment, you can also call this. API widget, and let's say 12 because we need an ID. Remember, because we have the ID in here. Has to match. Now we're going to send a body. Again, we're going to pick a JSON body. Name updated widget 12. Quantity 50. Oh, or 540. You know, maybe we got a ton more of them. Send that. And then you can get updated widget 12. And you can see it tells you that updated that. If I go to get widget by ID, I get the same object now. So you can see we're building a little bit of a library here. These are all the possible options that we might have. We're going to rename this one to update widget. And so you can actually create folders as well. So let's say I want to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this widgets, because maybe I have multiple objects. Can drag that in there. Or, well, I hope I can. Maybe I can't. Can I not drag into this? Maybe I have to open out. Maybe I can't. There's got to be a way to drag into this folder. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. Oh, there it is. Just took a little bit of time. Okay, so let's pop that all in there. It's a little difficult. So now I'm going to come in here, and you can see I can create new requests in the folder by clicking that arrow. If I click them here, I think it'll pop out to the main. So we have one last one, and that is the delete. So we're going to delete, and again, that takes an ID. So actually, I could, since delete doesn't take a body, I could actually duplicate my get. And I'm going to say delete widget by ID, and just change the type to a delete. And then if I run that, it'll give you the thing that deleted, and if I try to get it, I get a 404 because it doesn't exist anymore. So this is the basics of Insomnia. How to create those routes, how to set them, putting bodies on them. If you have other bodies, like form encoded, you can put it in here as well, and they have some pretty nice things to work with that. If you are using something different, like Postman has very similar concepts. It's not exactly identical, but yeah, it's very similar. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope this is helpful. If it was, we definitely appreciate you giving a like to the video because it helps us a lot. But either way, I'll see you next time.